recap of Twitch Tales' story to date, up to and including episode 75 of the running total. I'm going to do this from memory, so wish me luck. We started off with a nightmare of Apis' time in their home village, Shafgushal. Arriving back home to discover that it had been attacked by some kind of sickly, toxic green smell, and there was a haze hanging over the now lifeless village where there were dozens of dead bodies of the denizens. Apis vowed revenge upon holding the dead body of their younger sister Seda. They vowed revenge on the green dragon Unguhef, who ruled over the Giftigald forest. 3 years went by, and we woke up from that nightmare. 3 years later, to the north, in a forest called the Fair Woods, Apis realised they'd been out on the land as an outlander for quite some time, and so they needed to probably head into a village, some kind of civilization, to recover some spent items or fix some things that needed darning or replacing. So they went to a nearby town, a frontier town called Shadridge. Very small population of only about 100 people or so. Very tight-knit community out in the frontier of the wilderness. Once there, they discovered that the farmhand, the farmer Jack Creed, who ran the local mediary and apiary, had been murdered by goblins. Apis went after the goblins and managed to recover the stolen giant bee, the kidnapped giant bee, whose name is Mel, and return her home. And she was so grateful that she said, "Well, I'm not making mead for the mediary guy anymore, so I'll stick around you and we'll adventure together." And Mel became Apis' companion animal. And yes, she can talk. She's not the smartest, but she's capable of speech in Sylvan. Apis decided, with a bounty on their heads, to go after the goblins and reclaim that bounty, earn a bit of money while also protecting the town of Shadridge. And in doing so, they discovered a series of 4 elven towns called the Four Sisters, 4 elven villages out in the woods. They had also been attacked by these goblins, and so Apis, being the kind, giving person that they are, they stuck around the elven villages, and even in spite of some apprehensions on the elves' part at having a dwarf present, managed to help out and prove their worth and prove their loyalty to their friends, help them to rebuild, and earn some friends for life in the doing so. After that, Apis went back to the town of Shadridge and discovered that a couple of old people had died in their absence while they were out helping the elves. The circumstances around their deaths was a little suspect, and so Apis started to investigate and discovered that there was a necromancer in town that was using their powers to sap the life energy of the old folk, the sick or the injured people who were likely to die anyway, so they were trying to cover their tracks by targeting those folk. And then after death, they would raise raise from their corpse their shadow and sever it from their earthly form, and the shadow itself would become an agent of this necromancer. They'd only managed to amass 3 or 4 shadows before Apis managed to find them out, thankfully, because otherwise that could have been a very easy thing to snowball, and suddenly 2 shadows become 4, become 8, become 16. So right at the cusp of when this necromancer would have gained too much power, Apis managed to confront them, along with a new ally called Mosh, whom Apis discovered in the fight was a werefox, and drive the necromancer out of town. Sally, the necromancer, she disappeared into the woods, of the woods known as the Great Expanse, and has not yet been re-seen in the campaign, but as far as we know, she's still out there. Apis was tasked by the Knights of Kavosna, the law enforcement of this town, to take a letter to the more established nearby town of Fondurg to explain, hey, the supplies you've been sending have not been getting through, and we've been having some troubles with goblins and necromancers. So if any help could be greatly appreciated. Upon the journey, Apis was attacked by bandits and discovered firsthand why the supplies had not been getting through from Fondurg. There were bandits on this trail, and the bandits themselves were under duress. They weren't really wanting to be bandits, they were just regular townsfolk that were actually themselves heading towards Shadridge, but they were captured by a manticore and forced into servitude. Apis, once realizing this, bandied together with the bandits and attacked the manticore, defeated it, and stole back all of its loot, all of the belongings and supplies that they'd taken from Fondurg. Now the trail was clear and safe again, Apis once again set off south towards Fondurg. Upon arriving outside the town walls of Fondurg, however, Apis was attacked by some rather unusual creatures. Rats and squirrels that seemed giant in size and also scaly, green scales down their noses and backs. Upon reporting this to the Knights of Kvosna of Fondurg, there was a rather scared hubbub ensued, because that's a pretty good sign that a green dragon has moved into the area and started mating with the forest denizens, creating half-dragon offspring. Soon enough, unfortunately, that suspicion was confirmed as a green dragon landed outside the town walls and demanded retribution for Apis killing the rats and squirrel children of his army that he was growing. Apis went off on a espionage reconnaissance mission of sorts with a new friend, a new ally, a very small hobbit called Briar, who was a druid, part of the Pencampwyr and Amgylshed faction, the PEA for short, the Druidic Ranger faction. Apis and Briar were both captured, however, and outsmarted by the very intelligent and very witty Green Dragon, and they were taken to their lair to be treasures, to be living treasures. For several days, Apis and Briar were captive before Briar managed to escape. It took a few more days before Apis also managed to escape by biding their time, earning the dragon's trust, and while riding the back of the dragon, managed to join the fight with the dragon and his army, his half-dragon children. And the Royal Cross, the King's Guard, had arrived with Apis biding their time and managing to stall the dragon from its dastardly plans. The Royal Guard had arrived. The fight was brutal and long. Many people on both sides died. But Apis survived, and with one final shot from their arrow, making full use of their incredible archer skills, they managed to shoot the fleeing Lucifreak through the back of the head, and the dragon fell down into the forest below. It wasn't an immediate celebration on all parts, however, because it was somewhat of a Pyrrhic victory. The elves, being captives of Lucifreak for several years, had to now start to return to some level of normalcy, including one of the elven couples of that village, Beladel and his wife Olathea, from memory, deciding to head back home to a town to the north. Unbeknownst to us, they were from one of the four sister villages from earlier in the campaign. During all of this, meanwhile, while all of this has been going on, what also has been happening sort of in and out of dreams and level ups, Apis has been slowly discovering that they have some latent powers. They've been discovering through a series of prophetic dreams that they have caught the interest of a series of the gods of this world. a lot of their powers seem to have been granted to Apis by, say, the god of healing, or the god of the hunt, or even the god of trickery and disguise. And one particular, Merry Gentleman, an arch-fey of great power who seems to have taken a great liking to Apis' story. I feel like there was another god that was interested in Apis, but I'm forgetting what they were, if they were. Oh yes, the god of also the god of the god of pugilism, the god of hand-to-hand combat, the god of wrestling and unarmed fighting. Also took an interest in Apis as well, and gave them a level in fighter. During this discovery, this self-discovery of their own powers, Apis discovered that they are what's known as a horizon walker. Someone for whom the teleportation between planes is not as difficult as it is for most, as it's meant to be. Long ago, it seems the gods have put very strict rules on how to traverse the planes of this world. But for horizon walkers, one born every little while, it seems for whatever reason they are able to utilize the fundamental force magic of the building blocks of this universe and open portals for themselves, or detect portals for themselves. And the gods and the Merry Gentleman have taken great interest in that. Apis, however, is still slowly understanding what it means. Towards the end of this dragon Luciferic arc, as things are getting wrapped up, Apis is introduced to a potential ally, someone who might have been able to help out with the dragon, a shady individual that Apis has started calling Old Chap, because that's how he referred to Apis a few times. A gentleman who lives on his own in the woods, surrounded by undead, rotting animals that seem to do his bidding or protect him. Apis has reason to believe this man is a necromancer of some kind, and maybe even cursed. Either way, he wasn't very friendly. So when Apis finally returned to Fondurg, successful after the Luciferic battle, and managed to take part in a resurrection ritual to return one of the fallen wizards from the battle, restore her a new body, Apis brought up Old Chap, mentioned that he was living in the woods, and mentioned that he could be a potential ally to the town, if he could only be helped. The fallen wizard, Vala, she seemed perturbed by Apis's knowledge of this gentleman's existence, and asked for Apis to not pursue that. And so Apis didn't. As of right now, we don't know what is happening with him, if anything. What we do know is the last time we saw Vala, she was very hurriedly grabbing her coat and leaving to go and see him, it seemed, because we had just informed her that the King's Guard, the Royal Cross, they had been aware of his existence as well, which seemed to scare her a lot. Not our problem. We decided we were going to head back up to Shadridge, the frontier town, because it had been a while since we'd been there, being captive of a green dragon and all. As soon as we got back to Shadridge, we went to find our friend Mosh. Found that he was hidden away, keeping to himself, keeping his head down and doing his work on the farm. And when we spoke to him, he admitted to us that he was doing so because he had unfortunately lost control of his were curse and killed somebody. We followed him out into the woods where the crime scene was committed, to try and help him to understand and get some kind of closure on what had happened for himself. And when we did so, we discovered, no, it's not likely. The evidence here doesn't seem to show that you had actually killed somebody. You definitely attacked them, and there's plenty of blood, but it doesn't seem there was a body of any kind. It seems like they might have survived. This almost did the opposite of comforting him, however, because now he was terrified that he had passed on his terrible curse, this thing that had afflicted him for life, the thing that he hated himself for. He may well have passed it on to somebody else. When we continued to investigate, the identity of his victim became clear. Beladel and Olathea, on their way back from Lucifrique's captivity and on their way back home to Arachel, seem to have encountered Mosh in his werefox form and been attacked. As much as we did not like Beladel, wishing a were-curse on them is probably not in Apes's forefront of their mind. While we were here up in the woods anyway, in the Great Expanse, we checked in on the Forcester villagers, and we met an old gentleman named the Gravedigger. The Gravedigger seemed to have some kind of abilities with death and undeath, abilities to see things, not in the sense of a necromancer, but in the sense of more of a seer or a soothsayer, a medium of sorts. We asked him about necromancy in the woods, with both Old Chap and Sally on our minds still, and he mentioned that there was indeed a strong sense of necromancy to the north, further deeper into the Great Expanse. Following him that way, we discovered a body torn apart by demons, and as the gravediggers want to do, he wanted to put this gentleman to rest, dig him a proper burial site. But while doing so, dug into a root that seemed to start to bleed. This worried the gravedigger a great amount, as it is an evidence of blight in the area. Vampiric-like trees, undead plants that seem to lust after blood, need to feed and water themselves on blood. Sure enough, Apis got attacked by some blights in this part of the woods at a different part of the campaign, and it seemed to confirm their suspicions. Upon investigating further, Apis probed and got from the gravedigger that there was an area of the forest that creeped him out somewhat, an area that he used to live in and work in, a huge grave for all of the bodies of the forest that he would come across, where he could give them proper burial. Upon arriving at this grave, however, the necromancy was clear, because there were just shambling bodies and bones and skeletons and mounds of rolling flesh that would attack as soon as you get close. Apis barely managed to escape with their life, before, using their Horizon Walker portal detecting abilities, Apis was able to get a vision of a portal open on a nearby mountainside, a lone mountain out here in the great expanse of forest. And this portal seemed to be spewing forth demons. It seemed to be a portal to the abyss. Feeling a little overwhelmed, new to their horizon walking abilities, not knowing yet the extent of how one goes about closing portals, Apis decided to finally take up the Merry Gentleman, the suspicious arch-fey that has taken great interest in them, and on multiple occasions offered Apis to come to their home and practice and train and learn more about themselves. Apis reluctantly, but finally, decided to take up the Merry Gentleman on this offer and head to the Feywild. They did so. They used their portal abilities to track down a nearby portal to the Feywild, but upon stepping through it, they found themselves back on the material plane again, with some subtle differences. Their backpack now had a perch on it for their companion Mel to sit on. A box that had some prophetic dice in it, some divinatory dice, now had their name on it. They had some fey flowers in their pockets, but for their memory it seemed like they'd just stepped through the portal and back again. It was then that Apis remembered that the Feywild is a place of whimsy and merriment and trickster mischievousness. And that one of the properties of being there, if you're not from there, is that you may forget all of your time there when you return to the material plane. So at best, Apis could remember fuzzy memories, fuzzy half-remembered dreams of their time in the Feywild. The rest of it was gone. Mel, however, seemed to remember everything. And this was further evidence that Mel perhaps was from the Feywild to begin with, as she is a giant bee that can speak. Apis had in their hands a note from the Merry Gentleman saying something to the effect of, find this particular village, there's a friend there that can help you. And so, stumbling through the forest for a while, they looked for this village. But as they looked, they realized they kept forgetting over and again, even here on the material plane, the purpose of why they were there, why they were in this forest, what were they doing, which direction were they going. They kept having to rediscover the note in their hand. Until eventually a solitary wood elf, a hermit, arrived to scare them away, but upon hearing the name of the Merry Gentleman and the name of his own village, he realized that Apis must have been sent here to him, and he led him back to his village, Drenvale. It was there at Drenvale that Apis discovered an enormous tree that acts as a sort of portal to the Feywild, it seems, from your new companion Seed's descriptions anyway. And it was there that Apis discovered the other guardian of this village, a unicorn named Julius. Apis helped Julius and Seed with their jobs, which was namely to fix up some how to describe them, some protective abjurative magics known as the Sentinels, a series of large forms that take the appearance and visage of elves, great old elves, but have abjurative magics to protect the village. A few of them had been sabotaged, it seems, and broken and fallen into ill repair over the last few centuries, and so Apis is helping Seed and Julius with that. When they return to a site where Seed has been multiple times before to trade with some nearby denizens, some creatures known as myconids, a collective of mushroom people. The myconids can do something called a mind meld, where they will collectively dream and share their experiences of the day as a way of teaching, as a way of learning, as a way of understanding one another and empathizing. They invited Apis to join in on this, but very quickly called a halt to it, an emergency stop to the mind meld when almost psychic damage was being forced through them, as memories of the Feywild were trying to be forcibly accessed. The myconids realised what was happening, that Apis had recently been to the Feywild and forgotten a great deal of their memories, and so to uncover them, they needed to return with some particular type of fungus, a particular type of moss or mould. So Apis went deeper into the caves, fought a monster with a singular eye and large proboscis, and upon defeating that, did a little very unnecessarily gross harvesting of parts of that creature, grabbed some of the mould that they needed, and headed back to the myconids. As they got back to the myconids, they presented them with this mould, and began another mind meld. And as they did so, their memories of the Feywild came flooding back. We jumped back in time as a storytelling tool, back to the time that you stepped through the portal and started to act out the things that had already happened for Apis, but now they were just remembering it. As you arrived in the Feywild, one of the first things you did was save Mel from a bunch of flowers, as intoxicated by Feywild pollen, she had immediately gotten drunk. And then one of the next things you did was play your panpipes, because, I mean, if you're not going to play panpipes in the Feywild, what even is the point? Unfortunately for you, you did exceptionally well at the panpipe check, and so you seemed to meld yourself and blend yourself with the harmonies of this world. The music, the air itself seems to have music to it. And as you played, you seemed to gain the attention of the Feywild around you. In particularly, the creature known as an earworm, a dragon-like creature native to this plane that started to harmonize with you in a courtship sort of ritual. You got between this courtship of these two earworms that started to try and make you fearful, charmed, paralyzed. They attacked you multiple ways with their songs, and you managed to not succumb to almost any of them, with Mel succumbing to every one of them, until eventually they managed to scarper and leave you alone. You were met by a denizen of this plane, a sentient bipedal humanoid-looking creature known as an Eladrin. The Eladrin in question was called Dale and led you to their home. Discovered your purpose of being here, to visit the Merry Gentleman, or as Dale knows them, the Lord of Avalon. And Dale advised that if you are going to his home, if you've been invited to his home as a guest, you need to arrive with a gift. It's part of Fae culture to have a gift in hand when you visit somebody, especially as somebody as powerful and important as the Merry Gentleman. He advised that you do not turn up empty-handed, or it would be considered very rude, and, as Apis knows, things like insults and compliments have real, tangible weight here in the Feywild. They are more used as currency, insults and lies and favours and debts, rather than actual tangible coins. So in return for a story, you were presented a box. Dale gave you a gift to take to the Lord of Avalon, a jewellery box that was once made by a dryad, apparently. Dale took you to the beach and said, Lord of Avalon lives over yonder, over the sea here, and then played a game with you, a game of wits, 20 questions to intrigue and fish for a particular creature called a brainfish, an enormous whale-sized fish that seems to charm a creature and then take them into themselves and devour them from their brain downwards. However, if you can outsmart it in a battle of wits, then you can reverse the charm onto it, and you can use the brainfish as a submarine vessel. So doing so, in a very unpleasant journey, you manage to traverse this short strait between these islands and arrive on the island of the Merry Gentleman. When arriving at the beach, you met with a wandering wood elf who said that you can call him Farangol. This wood elf seemed to have no love lost for the Merry Gentleman, and when he heard that you were here to meet with him, he was suspicious of you, but ultimately offered to take you to him. As he headed through the swamps, he demonstrated his extreme adept skill with a bow and arrow. And then he got to the foothills of a mountain, and you could feel rumbling starting, like an earthquake below. But Farangol explained that this was not an earthquake, this was the mountain talking. And sure enough, as soon as you listened to it, trying to hear words, trying to understand meaning, the rumblings of the ground became like the vibrations of the air that create sound, and your body was able to interpret it as meaning. You interpreted 3 words. What are you? And that's where we ended off at the end of episode 75. Enjoy. Whoa, look at the names of all these cool people supporting me. If you want to see your name here, check out my Patreon. There's a lot of cool perks on there for you. You'll enjoy it.